When many people hear the term influencer, the first person that jumps into their mind might be one of the Kardashians. But the truth is that today, anyone can create content, and many people are doing just that and making a living doing it.
There are so many different journeys that people take to get there. Some of these happen kind of by accident, when people share the things they love with the world and they wake up one day with an audience who just can't wait to hear more.
But this podcast isn't about how to get rich as a creator.
Instead, this podcast is all about getting started.
Cheers to getting started. Great. Well, Luke, thanks so much for joining us today. Really excited to chat and hear a little bit more about your content creation journey. Maybe to kick things off, would love to just hear how you got started posting on TikTok.
Yeah, so actually it's my story goes way back. Even so I actually moved into this place last year in July of 2022. But prior to that, I've always had this thought of wanting to create content in the back of my mind. And I knew it would be around fashion mainly, but I didn't also know like what other, it was just like basically an idea. And so when I moved into here, which was also like a separate thing, but I wanted to just experience living alone. And at the same time, I had the opportunity to start making content because when I was at home, I didn't really have the room, the space. Also, like my parents were always around too, so it was just really inconvenient to make content. And so that's pretty much how I got started. And yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I feel like I've heard that from other content creators before, that like having the space makes a big difference, and that when there are people around, there's this element of self-consciousness, or it makes the whole creation process a lot harder.
Yeah.
Was that your experience too?
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. And I'd love to hear a little bit more too about, so it sounded like you had been thinking about creating content for a while. We're specifically interested in fashion, as well as it seemed like kind of moving into a new place kind of sparked some of the themes for your content. I would be curious to hear kind of what your goals were when you were first starting to post, like going back to those very early days.
Yeah, so when I first started, I was focused primarily on fashion content because that is what I enjoyed. And I realized like as I started posting, like there's definitely like a lot of things going through my mind, such as like what other people were posting, what was trending as well. Trends were such a big thing, outside of what I like too, like what could I post to make my content go viral. So that virality and trying to get exposure was also a big thing. And then, I realized like I also started to like not feel so good about my own content too because of what was doing well. And but at the end of the day, like I try to look at my own values too and see what resonates with me the most and what I hold dear to. And that's definitely being authentic and true to myself, and definitely bringing in the audience that I want to attract to watch my content. And eventually, like I knew I could only do so much with fashion as well. Like fashion was not only what I was focused on in life. There are definitely other areas I feel like I could have shared, that could be like moving out. And I embody a pretty minimal lifestyle in my daily life. I like to keep things simple, peaceful, just I'm not really like, I'm pretty much an introvert. I don't really go out that much. I like to stay at home on weekends. But I also have this level of discipline as well for myself, like when I'm living alone. And I feel like that was also another part that I could share. And so it's like living with more intention, I guess. So living minimally, living with intention, making good choices and developing good habits. And combining that with like fashion, it also gave me like that put a better picture towards me, I guess, which is what I wanted to show towards my viewers, and which is the route that I'm going more down towards now, which is this minimal and like slow living. And yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I feel like that it felt like kind of watching your journey like felt like a very natural transition into that kind of aesthetic of minimal living and kind of slow living. And one of the things that I like is that I about your content specifically is I feel like it serves as such a contrast to a lot of the other content that I follow that it really makes me kind of pause. And so that's something that I really appreciate about your content. Can you talk to me a little bit more about how you sort of cultivate that aesthetic or sort of some of the thought that goes into the content that you produce?
Yeah, so it's both a mix of what I feel would do well and what I feel like that I like too. And definitely like my content creation process has evolved in the last 7 or 8 months since I've been on TikTok, because I just started last August, and it's definitely been a big journey. Like when I look back at some of my old videos, like I definitely would have not like done this or done that. And um currently I am more focused on um but recently the algorithm on TikTok has definitely changed, and people are getting a lot less views, and that's just I think part of the algorithm reprioritizing content that's good. And that's just they just want to compete with other platforms, I think. And with that in mind, like I definitely tailor my content to be more like it's mostly like half aesthetic and half value, I would say. So I'm trying to provide value in a way aesthetically where it could show viewers like, this is like also like a really great thing. Um, whatever content I'm posting relates to fashion and minimal living. Um, it's providing that like aesthetic to it as well. So aesthetics has really been in my mind recently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned how like the algorithm changes. Like, how do you sort of like, I imagine that can be a tough like mental game too, is like when you're creating content. And so I guess how do you kind of stay motivated to keep continuing despite, whether the content is going viral or not? Like, how do you sort of stay motivated and consistent amidst having things that are outside of your control, such as the algorithm?
Yeah, so like I personally enjoy like making content regardless of what the algorithm um, is currently at. And I feel like that's a really big thing to be able to like enjoy the process, because if someone is just making content to only, serve the algorithm and to get their content boosted, and, maybe they just get like a nice dopamine boost from it, like that's really nice too. But I think if you actually want to like make the content and enjoy what you're doing, and make it like a long-term thing, like you definitely need to like not be phased by, the number of views that you're getting, especially with the algorithm right now. And I feel like that's such a big thing, just like being able to enjoy the process. And that's also something that I've been thinking about more too, because sometimes I'll just like make content, um, and then I won't enjoy it because I like force myself. And I just have to like remind myself that, whatever I post, it doesn't always have to go viral. It doesn't always have to get views, and naturally and organically over time, because I feel like I'm at a pretty good pace right now. I'll get to the place where I want to be. And yeah, I think when I have that thinking in mind, I'm just like a lot more satisfied and content with things. And it just brings like a peace of mind to it as well.
Yeah, I really like that. That makes a lot of sense. And one thing that you had mentioned there too about uh, sort of developing the habits or kind of enjoying the process. Can you talk a little bit more about like what a day in the life looks like for you? How do you sort of develop these like, healthy processes, like both in terms of your relationship with the content, but just yeah, your day-to-day life as a content creator? What does that look like?
Yeah, so Currently, I still work a full-time job. I'm working as a nurse in a private community facility, and so that already takes away most of my time because I work like just slightly over 40 hours a week, and to make for most people, I would say like to make content on the side is just like something they would not do outside of that. I also try to like think about how to organize my time better as well. But and there's definitely this like battle in between my head, like, oh hey, can I relax or like should I make some content? Also like I also have other priorities in life too, right? I have to like maintain my fitness, maintain I have to like eat well, spend time with family and friends, maintain my social balance, social and life balance. And that's also a other important factors too as an adult that you have to focus on. And also like taking your phone out and randomly recording like when you're out with your friends or something is kind of like weird. So I just try to I definitely try to like think about it in the moment, whether it's a good time to make content or not. And when I'm at home, I do try to dedicate some time to make video, like either once or twice. I usually have 4 days off. That's a great thing about working in healthcare and in my position. Um, but I do try to balance that with my other priorities in life as well. And when it comes to like my content creation ideas, um, I just naturally tend to come up with ideas spontaneously. So if I'm going about my day and something comes up, I'll just write it down on my phone. And then when it comes to the day of like, I feel like filming something and I also won't try to force it, I'll film that idea and it'll just work out. So it also comes naturally as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I feel like that point around, yeah, you don't always want to have your phone out necessarily when you're enjoying time with friends. And I also feel like I was talking with another content creator who we had on the podcast about how it's starting to become maybe more socially acceptable for somebody to like have a phone out, like if they're like at a restaurant or like out in public. But there's also kind of balancing. Any looks that you might get. And so I guess for you, how do you think about that sort of, I guess that balance or in the creating content, kind of, do you do most of it just from your home yeah, I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about your process there too.
Yeah, because since I would say since most of my content primarily revolves around like my living style and fashion, like I can probably make maybe 80% of my content at home, which is
Mhm.
good in the sense that when I go out, like I'm not really filming that much. And when I do go out and film, it's usually filming, like bits and pieces of just my life. Um, I also don't have like a really like impressive social life, so like I'm also okay like just not documenting that too. Um, yeah, like again, when it comes to filming outside, it definitely comes to the person's judgment on the situation. Like if this is like socially acceptable at this time to film. Obviously, if you're at a really important event or you know, it might not be acceptable to film in that moment. So yeah, just take some discretion on the creator's end.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one thing too, I guess, is I feel like a lot of advice to creators when they're first starting out is to focus on a niche and figuring out your niche and kind of building from there. I feel like you've had like a very natural evolution of like starting to fashion to kind of expanding to your home to other areas of minimal living. I guess, do you think that advice to somebody just starting out is good advice in terms of focusing on a niche? Or if you had any advice for somebody who is starting today, what would be your I guess number one piece of advice?
Yeah, so I actually believe that starting in one niche is a great place to start just because you can initially attract like an audience. Because if you're starting from 0 followers and you're kind of doing here and there and touching on different things, it's kind of hard for your audience to gauge like where where your content's heading. And so it'll give this like sense of like being sporadic, which is not necessarily, a good thing. And for my content just evolving over time, I also follow a lot of other creators too, like on TikTok. And one of the niches that I follow is just how to be like a good creator as well, like the niche of content creating. And one of the creators that I've followed, she gave some really good advice that I thought was really um, really like resonated with me, which was to actually become the niche. And because if you're not just like one person talking about fashion, and that's not just all about you. You also you also embody different, you have your personality, you have your other interests, you have just the way that you are, which makes you totally unique from another person and their own perspectives as well. And another thing I wished I started doing in the beginning of content creating was just also putting more of my personality out there as well, and like also talking more to the camera and talking more to the viewers, because I feel like it gives a sense of relatability for the viewer, for them to be able to, understand your thought process, what you think about certain things, and for them to be able to, be more relatable in your content. And that's something that I didn't really do that as much. I was more focused on like obvious talking into the camera is not my strongest point. So that's why it was another reason why I didn't do that. But I'm slowly coming out of my shell and making more of content like that too. And yeah, so I feel like as if there's a new creator, um, definitely focusing on one niche, putting out more of your personality, and opening that up more early on, so that down the line you already have a list of videos that they can go back to and see that you're not just they know more about you. And yeah.
I like that. Yeah. So start with a niche and then eventually get to a point where you become the niche.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, I really like that. That's a beautiful evolution. It sounds like something that you've been able to do really well. And I guess another question that I had is, so you mentioned some of your goals, like early on when you were first starting out, was like very much like focused on the trends, like virality, like very focused on, I'm guessing, growth and like those views. How have your goals evolved over time as you have grown more of a following and more of a community? Have your goals changed? Like, is it still about growth or engagement, or maybe earning more money? Would be curious to hear kind of how those goals have evolved.
Yeah. So in the beginning I was solely focused on growth. And actually I feel like that hasn't strayed too much away from what my goals are now. Just I definitely want to scale like higher too, but obviously more authentically. Um, and that's sort of the fine line that I'm balancing, like being authentic while at the same time scaling really high. Mostly in my followers though. I want to scale on my followers, and like I'm not too much worried about the monetization or brand deals. I feel like that those will just come over time. Um, and definitely more focused on improving the quality of my content too. That's something that I've been doing as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And in terms of that quality of the content, you had mentioned before how you're sort of focusing on you like doing more sort of talking to the camera, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Are there other sort of things that you're thinking about in terms of, yeah, that quality aspect?
Yeah. So when I think about quality, it doesn't just come to like how how nice the camera is, the quality of the picture, which is what we might first refer to. But quality for me, it's pretty much anything that'll like improve the video in context of the TikTok algorithm. Because the algorithm is constantly changing, I have to adapt to it. So, and also balancing it between my aesthetic and authenticity. So it's focused a lot around like, for this clip, how long can it be? Or like, like what can I do for this clip to like make it, nicer, or like should I zoom it in? It's like the quality of my edits as well. It's like um showcasing like, what text should I use as well? Like, how long should the text be? So it's like every factor in the edit is carefully considered.
Yeah, and I guess with regards to kind of creating content, I mean, for you, do you see it like long term as something that you'd like to do full time as a career, or do you think that right now the main focus is just getting better and kind of more focused on it as a hobby? Or would love to hear a little bit about your long term aspirations as well.
Yeah, so like I do enjoy making content a lot, and currently at my job, like I make a pretty comfortable living, uh, working as a nurse. But the drawback of working as a nurse is that it just sucks out so much energy out of me, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Just the nature of the job, and the stress that comes with it, dealing with patients and that sort of thing. And I definitely do see myself working as a nurse down the line. But I think if I'm going into my 30s and 40s, like my values would probably change in the sense that, I'm definitely like a family guy. So I want to focus more time on family. So if the possibility comes where I can make content to the point there where I can, step down from working full time to even just part time or casually, like that would even benefit me so much to bring in like an extra source of income, which I think for a lot of families and people nowadays, especially in this period of life where it's like inflation's going up, like everything is just so expensive nowadays. Like it's hard to make like a good living, and I feel like people are finding different ways to do that. And not just that, it's getting a lot more competitive too. And yeah, like people just have to adapt to the time period now, which is really unfortunate and sad as it sounds. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I could see how content creation can kind of be a way to supplement or to also just kind of create more, whether it's stability or just flexibility in terms of the way that you approach work. That makes a lot of sense. And for you, when you think about sort of, maybe getting to a point where maybe you're doing your full time job as a nurse more part time, what are the ways that you're thinking that could you could do that through your content creation? Is it largely in working with brands? Is it maybe starting your own brand, like a fashion brand, or how are you sort of thinking about that aspect of it?
Yeah, so
Don't mind sharing.
yeah, like I guess I don't really discuss too much about my own career within my own content. Although that could be another pathway that I could take to talk about that, because I feel like um as a male in as a nurse, like actually the rise of male nurses is going up, but I feel like for a lot of people that are not informed about, male nurses being in health as a nurse, like there's a stigma there too, because it's mostly like a female dominated profession. I feel like that's also something that I could that would provide a audience to for a very specific group of people. Um, Although I don't think I would go that route, I would more focus on um, I'm currently doing. And I still think that there's definitely a potential for me to like start a brand around the content I have. And I'm not exactly sure what that would be right now. It's probably gonna be a mix of fashion and, I guess products that that would benefit you in life. But definitely I would, because there's a lot of people that just go into making brands for the sake of sales, and they like put stuff out that people don't need. And like that's definitely like not what I want to do. I don't like. I also have been reached out by many brands to collaborate, but I don't actually accept probably 80 or 90% of them. And I feel like that authenticity of like being real with their viewers is really important. So I only put out stuff and promote brands I feel like are I could actually see my viewers using, and I feel like that credibility is really important if I eventually want to start a brand, and I just want to hold on to those values as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, for the brands that reach out to you and the 80% to 90% that you say no to, what makes you say yes to a brand? Like, what are for the 10%, is it, you mentioned like, brands that you feel like your audience would resonate with. Are there other sort of factors that you look for in sort of developing those relationships or partnerships?
Yeah, so they essentially have to align with the values that I hold, and so not just being minimal and sustainable is a big thing too. But it doesn't necessarily have to be sustainable. I know it's hard to be sustainable all the time. But also I don't mind working with brands that, help to improve my growth too, if they're like a pretty big brand as well. But in terms of the brands that I don't collaborate with, um, sometimes it comes down to professionalism. The brand is like not very professional, or I look at their website and it's like they like made it on Shopify in 5 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
And that like aesthetic and image that they hold, I definitely like prefer a high quality brand working with me, if that makes sense. Um, I have to like believe in their products too. I feel like the products have to be good, not you know, it's not like cheaply made. Because one thing is that I've come to learn is like investing in high quality products and just purchasing them once is way better than buying, several cheap products that may just wear out over time, which is like the problem that I face, whether in fast fashion or in my daily life. And, it has to be the right fit for me too. Like I was once reached out to by Skims from Kim Kardashian. So like, I don't know what was happening over there with their PR department. They wanted to send me some lingerie to try out. So, like they didn't even do their research to see what my content was about. Maybe they just thought about sending mass amounts of emails to everyone and hoping people will respond. So yeah, so basically professionalism, uh, like, their aesthetic, high quality, um, minimal, doesn't have to be sustainable, but definitely if I can see some effort in that, that also would be helpful too.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And yeah, I like, your approach on like authenticity and sort of building these relationships. I mean, I think that you definitely see there are some creators out there, maybe more in the fast fashion space where they're like constantly doing sponsored posts. And I do think that there's a risk to kind of losing engagement with their audience. And maybe for those people, they've found a way, like their audience is very kind of hooked into what they're providing, but I do feel like there's an interesting parallel between fast fashion and maybe like fast content. I don't know if that's a word, but content, that's kind of more geared towards that style. So I guess more of a comment. I don't know if there's a question in there, but I guess for you in sort of figuring out when you do collaborate with these brands where you feel like it's a very, their values aligned with you. How do you think about sort of inserting them into your content? Like, is it largely like sponsored posts? Is it sort of like sharing affiliate links, discount codes, or what is that? What does that type of relationship typically look like?
Yeah, so that's actually something I'm still figuring out a lot along the way as a creator. That I was never, I didn't actually know too much about that when I started, so I was pretty much like in the dark, and I had to do a lot of research myself to figure out what that would be. Um, because I decline a lot of the collaborations. Like I've also just had to like when I've actually landed one, I had to like figure out and communicate what to do. For example, like if we're talking about um like most of the brands actually want me to they just want to send me like a gift, and they want for me to like promote that. So they'll either provide me with an affiliate link, or they'll just want me to just straight up promote the product that they're doing. And like I said before, I only do the ones that I feel like are worth doing. And most of the time, um, they'll actually no, like the ones I've received recently are just sending me products and wanting me to promote them, which which in, which would benefit the brand more, and with no like affiliate link or something like that. So it doesn't really benefit the creator a lot. So I'm just trying to like be more like negotiating with brands nowadays in terms of what I get like in return as well. So that's definitely talking about payment too, which is another like topic that I'm still trying to figure out too.
Yeah, and have you, on that payment side, found any resources that you think are particularly helpful? Because I feel like that's a lot of creators we're talking to are sort of in a similar boat where maybe they even have like a lot smaller followings than you do, but they're first starting to work with brands and are trying to figure it out. Have you found any like resources out there that you found that were useful in terms of figuring out how to negotiate those brand relationships, or kind of almost graduating beyond the gifted relationship, so to speak?
Yeah, so like the yeah, like you said, there actually isn't a lot of content out there to help new creators. Like I've tried like Reddit, I've tried YouTube. Um, there's this other site that I've tried. I've also tried TikTok too, but the site that I've tried is called hashtag Pay Me. Yeah, I used their calculator, and like they were giving me like rates a lot higher than what I was thinking to be appropriate, which is interesting. But nowadays, like even I think with the direction where content is going, brand like the budgets that brands have now for creators is also a lot smaller too. Because I feel like um when COVID was here, everyone was focused on like they were shifting towards online because everything was good. So in that sense, creators were, they were massively benefited to be able to be in a position where they could like receive large amounts of budgets for people staying at home because no one wanted to go out. But I feel like there's a shift again. Everyone's returning back to normal, like COVID's over. So I think a retail space has again become a lot more valued by brands, and to be able to like draw more customers in. So I think that's another shift as to why brand budgets have been a bit low. And another thing that I've done is just like pitching my own like numbers too. Like I'll just like throw out some numbers at brands, and then they'll like think about they'll usually like try to like lowball me more. So that's another thing I'm trying to like navigate, where I find like a balance between the brand and myself.
That makes sense. And have you ever done any sort of more like UGC type collaborations where the brand is maybe working with you, where you'll create a video and you won't necessarily post it on your own account, but you'll send it to the brand for them to use in their marketing materials? Is that something that you've done at all? It seems like that's like one way that creators are making money these days too.
Yeah, I've definitely looked into that, and I've seen like a niche. I've seen that as a niche where you typically UGC creators they're trying to grow on TikTok, but they generally have smaller followings, and
Hmm.
like I sort of wanted to get into that, but I don't think that I'm gonna go in that direction. I feel like UGC. I do get some UGC for myself, but um, yeah, I don't think it's working out for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's also, to your point, it seems like it's something that a lot of times folks who don't yet have an audience maybe are exploring. Whereas, like with you, you already have a decent following, and so that's something that you can leverage and hopefully use that to kind of build different relationships with brands. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I guess would love to hear a little bit more too about uh with fashion, how you sort of evolved into this more kind of like minimalist style. Like have you always been interested in fashion like since like you were a kid, or how did you, can you talk a little bit about your evolution of just your interest in the niche that you're creating content in?
Yeah, so I've always been into fashion at a young age. Um, I feel like growing up, I didn't really receive a lot of, nice clothing. I was in elementary school, I had pretty low self-esteem, and going into high school as well. And one of the things about growing up in an Asian parent household is that they're very frugal with you with whatever they want to purchase. They'll set strict rules for you. They'll tell you to not do this and that. And that was very restricting for me. And I wasn't even given any allowance or a phone. I didn't get one till I was in college. And I think it was more of the self-esteem, because when I put on like some nice clothes at a store, it just like instantly boosted my confidence. And I just felt like that was like a really, aha moment for me, to be able to do that. And that's when I really started to like look more into that, purchasing nice clothes. Because when I first started, I was probably grade 10. I only had like $5 or $10, so I'll just buy a hoodie from Blue Notes, or like one of those like cheaper fast fashion brands that I was able to get a hold of. And at that time, it did well for me. But now, like, um, I still feel that value of dressing well. It can take you to a lot of places. Like, it makes you, not only does it make you feel good, other people's impressions of you change as well. But people should mostly be dressing like for themselves and like the confidence that they have. And I feel like a lot of people could use that.
Yeah, I really like that. And I guess related, do you have a favorite piece in your wardrobe right now that you're really excited about, or a few pieces?
Um, hmm, that's a great question, because I actually haven't been buying like clothes recently, and I've just been like trying to save right now because uh, I've like made too many poor choices where I just like impulse buy, and then I'll wear it like once or twice, and then I probably won't wear it, but I'll still like the piece to keep it in my wardrobe. And so lately, I've been more intentional with what I'm trying to buy. And so I guess in terms of like my favorite pieces, that's a really hard question because I like all my pieces, but there's not like really one that stands out for me, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. Seems like it's good to like them all
Yeah.
to put the thought into it. That makes, yeah, makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm actually in the process of building like, or trying to build like more of like a capsule wardrobe. I don't know if that's something that you like advise folks on, or is that something that you've thought about too in the context of like minimal living or minimal fashion?
Yeah, like I totally I love the concept of a capsule wardrobe. I think it's like it's actually something that I feel like I might go down towards some point in my life. Um, but right now at this point, I think personally I like to wear different styles, and I wear a lot of different things, and I just like to, like, in that sense, it's just like to express myself in those ways. Um, so I don't think right now, like at this time, capsule wardrobe is for me. Although the I do 100% value the capsule wardrobe. So I really respect you for doing that. And like with a capsule wardrobe, you can still make like, 10 or 20 outfits from the 5 or 6, 5 or 6 pants that you have, or however many pieces of items that you have. Like, yeah, I respect it a lot that you can, you can rotate those outfits with the, 10 or 15 or so pieces that you have, and focus more on like, a timeless silhouette, and saving a lot of money too in the process. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the goal for me, and I would say that I am still aspiring. I have not fully committed to it yet, but I'm trying. It's definitely tough.
That's good.
Um, yeah, and yeah, I think that that's also interesting in terms of like minimal living or minimal fashion. I feel like there is this kind of spectrum of maybe like capsule wardrobe is like all the way over on this end of the spectrum, and then there's the kind of more maximalist style, and then there's a lot of like room in between. And so maybe it's just kind of about finding rules or guidelines that make sense for you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah.
what works for you.
Awesome. Well, I guess maybe we can. This has been a great conversation so far. Maybe we can kind of shift to wrapping up.
Sure.
But yeah, would love to hear a little bit more about what you have on the horizons. Anything that you want to plug or share with folks who are listening?
I'm not sure who's going to be watching this, but I just want to say thanks for watching, and just want to like appreciate you guys for setting up Meru and like inviting me for this podcast as well. And at this time, there's nothing really like I have for the future. I'm just kind of like go with the flow kind of guy. So I feel like yeah, whatever happens, you'll see it on my content. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll keep our eyes peeled. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, very thankful that you're in our orbit. So thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Evelyn.